Cool. All right. And then physical action and movement. Can anybody think of a career that uses your gross or fine motor skills that would be creative? And you can put it in the chat if you don't want to speak out loud.
A landscaper?
Sure. Landscaping, I think that'd go for science and math too. Coach, a ballerina, an artiste, a jewelry maker, a makeup artist. Oh, stunt double. Yes. Super fun. Okay. All right. So next bit is, why should we bother about growing children's creativity? Well, it has been shown that creative people can handle changes or handle disruption rather well. They have a more flexible mind. They're more willing to try something new. They can see connections across domains. So if you're really creative, you can see that, oh, I'm working on this architecture project. I should go pull in the landscaper to figure out how we can work together to create something unique. Develop internal motivation. That's a big one for us. A lot of us have grown up being externally motivated. If you are taking notes, this might be something that you might want to take a note on: internal motivation versus external motivation. I'm going to write those two words in the chat for you. Internal. There's internal motivation and external motivation. When you were growing up and the teacher gave you a gold star, well, that sounded exciting, and the teacher gave you a gold star, that was external motivation. The teacher was trying to motivate you using the treat to say, I know you can do this, you can really do it. You want this treat, right? Come get it. That is external motivation. That is what a lot of us were brought up on. Can anybody think of something that either your family or your teacher used to use to motivate you to do something? And you can put it in the chat or you can shout out. What was a good external motivator for you when you were growing up? Money. Okay. Getting to have lunch with the principal, snacks. I'm not going to lie, when I was a young teacher, I had a box of Airhead candies behind my cabinet, and I got a lot of block areas cleaned up quick with Airheads. Rewards. So right now, external motivation for you hasn't changed very much, has it? You're still willing to go out of your way to get a snack or go out of your way to get a little cash reward for something, or to get to sit. I saw somebody said get to sit with the principal, get to sit with somebody you admire. Maybe there's a celebrity coming into town and you were told you could go visit that celebrity if you did this list of tasks. You'd be, okay, give me the list, I'm doing it. So those are external rewards. Internal rewards are more difficult to cultivate. Internal means that you want the child to actually want to do it. Not just want the toy surprise, they actually want to do the task. And that's harder to develop. You're supposed to help them see the benefits to themselves for doing the task. If you remember some of the ways we talked about communicating with children, instead of praising them and saying, good job, which is an external reward. So saying good job, and saying, everybody look, Krista zipped up her coat. Good job, Krista. That's external. Internal would be, Krista, you zipped up your coat. You must be so proud and you're going to be so warm. Can you see the difference there? External is you're doing it for praise. Internal is you're doing it to keep yourself warm and develop a feeling of self-confidence and self-worth. Can you think off the top of your head something that you do for an internal reward as an adult? I, as an adult, do crochet for an internal reward. Okay? I do it because I find it super relaxing and I like the challenge of figuring out the patterns. I'll even get patterns in different languages and like get on Google Translate and try to figure this stuff out because I find it amusing. I do that for an internal reward. Something else I do for an internal reward is I shower fairly frequently. Internal reward, I like to not stink. And yeah, that's just a big one for me right there. Is there anything you do currently for only an internal reward? Reading, sleep, definitely. Clean my house, okay. Shopping, Cleaning, baking, bubble baths, shopping, reading, binge watching Netflix, painting, cleaning, shopping. These, with the exception of the cleaning, all sound delightful to me. Burn candle at the house. So hopefully, like for the smell or just for the light, or one, both? Taking a drive, okay. Smell, got it. So these are things we do for internal motivation. What are things we do for external motivation? Probably go to work. I'm not even going to ask y'all that. We probably go to work for external motivation, to get paid, to be able to keep on our lovely lights and go shopping and take our showers. So external motivation. Hopefully you enjoy what you do at work, which will provide some internal motivation. Because if you have a job where it's completely external and you don't enjoy anything about it, are you going to keep that job very long? Probably not. You're probably going to look around for a different job that looks like it might be enjoyable, somewhat at least. The problem with external motivation is this. Let's say, what is one thing? Let's see, we talked about, okay, let's keep with work. Let's keep with work. The problem with external motivation is if tomorrow you were told, we're not going to pay you anymore, how long would you keep coming? Just think to yourself. You don't need to say it out loud. This is being recorded. You don't want that out there in the world. But think about it. If your job stopped the external motivation, you're not going to get paid anymore. How long would you keep doing it? You'd probably look around and find something else to externally motivate you. You probably wouldn't stay at that position. It's the same thing with when we externally motivate kids in our classroom. So you have the toy surprise. If you clean up the block area really nice, I will give you this toy surprise. And they're like, great, I'll clean it up. Give me my toy surprise. Maybe after 2 weeks, that toy surprise isn't doing it for them anymore. Maybe they have 2 weeks worth of toy surprises and they're like, no, nope, not doing it anymore. Then what do you have to do? This is a question. What do we do if the toy surprise isn't doing it anymore? I'll do my wait time. Change it up. Yep, Ruby, change it up. So if the toy surprise isn't working anymore, odds are you're gonna have to get a different surprise or a better surprise, right? And so you start with just this little toy surprise at the beginning of the school year to clean the block area. And during the school year, it keeps growing, getting bigger, changing. That's a lot of work on the teacher's part. What happens if middle of the school year, you've got a medium-sized prize and you say, you know what? You know how to clean the block area now. You're just going to do it because you should be doing it. Is the block area going to get cleaned? Not well. They might like throw 2 things at the shelf and then stomp off, but it's not going to get cleaned well. Now think about it this way. So that's external. An external thing, you need to keep the toy surprise going. You need to keep the money coming. You need to keep the praise and adoration coming. Otherwise, they don't want to do it anymore. Because that's the reason they're doing it, for the praise, for the money, for the toy surprise. Internal, let's use the same block area. Internal, beginning of the school year, you talk to the children about, this is our community, this is our classroom. In our community, we need to work together to keep it clean and tidy so that we don't fall down and hurt ourselves. So everybody can find where the toys are, so that we can be good citizens of our community. And if you start out with that internal motivation, you can just keep that riding the whole year and keep reinforcing it. We are good citizens of our community. We're keeping it clean. We're keeping it organized. We know where everything is. And because we know where everything is and we keep it nice, we can have more nice things in the classroom and keep them going that way. Does that make sense? The difference between internal supports itself and can keep going for longer than external. So internal over time, so those of you that said you enjoy cleaning, you are probably people that were internally motivated at some point to clean as a child and weren't just given the toy surprise. If you were given the toy surprise to clean as a child, you're probably like, cleaning, somebody needs to pay me for that. I'm not doing that. Internal versus external, very important. We're trying to develop internal. All right, next slide. So I thought this was delightful. Creativity is not a specific skill. Creativity is not teaching the children how to color lines. It's an attitude instead. Creativity is, I wonder what we can do better, different. For many years, we considered creativity as a gift. Only gifted children were created. But we were confusing that with talent. Talent is when you have a natural ability at something. Something that you don't have to work as hard at to do it well. So I'm sure everybody here has some sort of natural talent at something. Maybe you are a talented makeup artist. Maybe you are a talented baker. And you didn't have to do a lot, the same kind of work at being a good baker that Marbella had to do to be a good baker. Maybe Marbella had to work harder at it because it just wasn't one of her talents, but she's still a good baker, but she had to work harder to get there. So talent is something that it's one of those skills that maybe even as a young child, you're starting to show that you have a higher level naturally at. Creativity, however, is the ability to invent or imagine an original idea. So we are not, as teachers, we're not talent scouts. We're not going out to find the next best, greatest host of the Food Network. We are instead trying to foster each child's creativity and their perseverance to keep at a task, to learn to a level that works for them. All right, so in your classroom, how can you start developing creativity? We talked first about internal motivation, trying to make sure children are doing things for themselves and understanding how it helps themselves or the community, rather than just doing it to know that the teacher loves me by saying good job. The next is the teacher can be creative in the classroom. So modeling creativity. For modeling creativity, you can, it's super fun. You should try. You can act a little strange, not really, really strange because you don't want to scare the kids, but you can act a little strange. So let's say you're doing a coloring activity with the kids and they're supposed to be coloring what their pet looks like if they have a pet, okay? And you have your own sheet of paper and you are not going to draw a beautiful rendition of a kitty cat. Instead, you're going to think about, okay, I need to be creative and whimsical to model it for these kids. Let's think, okay, I know my, and you can do this out loud. It's good if you do it out loud. Say, oh, I think I'm going to be a little creative with my drawing. My cat is orange, but I think I'm going to make it a darker red to show that it has a really fiery temper. I'm going to make my cat's ears a little bigger than normal because I know my cat can hear really well from across the room. I'm going to put my cat in a background that has a lot of swirling bright colors because my cat is so energetic. So, you know, just talking through out loud why you're doing and how you're trying to be creative is modeling creativity. So you can't just draw something that's wackadoodle and not say anything about it. You kind of need to talk through why you're being a touch weird. So let's say that you want to foster some creativity during your daily schedule. You could try a different transition with the kids. So typically you would be asking the children to take turns like, oh, Liz, today, how are we going to transition to go outside? And maybe Liz says, well, I want to move like a princess to go outside. Okay, Liz, show me, how does a princess move? And maybe Liz does some interesting twirling motions or stomps, who knows, and shows us what princess is, and we copy her and do that. Maybe it can be your turn one day. And you say, I would like to pick the transition today. Today, I want us to move like water. And you can demonstrate how the water would flow out. So it's not just all about the kids being supported. The teacher can have a turn as well. You can model creativity by taking different toys outside with you. So a lot of our playgrounds are mixed age playgrounds. All the kids use them up to like 5th grade sometimes, or even higher. That means that they usually don't have toys outside that are specific for your age group because the 5th graders would destroy them very quickly. So what you can do is have a big like netted bag or something to take specific toys outside with you. The kids can play with them while they're outside, and then you can bring them back in with you when you're done. So you don't have to worry about the other kids destroying them out there. So typically we would take balls outside. Can anybody think of something that's typical to take outside when you are doing this kind of thing? Balls are the low-hanging fruit. That's an easy one to take out. Can anybody think of something else that we should take outside? You can put it in chat or you can shout out, bubbles! We did enjoy our bubble activity, didn't we? That was good. Chalk. Jump ropes. Those are super fun because kids don't jump rope anymore, or I don't usually see them jump rope. So that's a whole new life skill you can teach there. Hula hoops, same thing. Jump rope, hula hoops. How about a bucket of water and some of these? Music. Ring. I don't know what ring is, but it sounds interesting. Bye. I'm
Those
guessing
rings,
that's
I'm sorry, those rings that like circle rings, like you can throw them and they go on little cones.
okay. Gotcha.
I don't know what they're called.
It's like
rings,
for a ring toss type deal.
ring
I'm
toss.
with you.
Yes.
Toy cars and trucks, definitely. It'd be super fun to play with toy cars and trucks if you had a sandbox or a pebble box to play in. Bean bags. You could take, theoretically, you could take blocks out there. You could take, let's see, what else could you take? Babies, the little toy babies you could take out. You could take a sensory table because usually you don't have water play outside. And honestly, water play is best outside because you don't have to worry about the floor getting slippery. Basketballs, baskets, some cardboard boxes. Has anybody ever seen a kid go to town on a cardboard box? And we have cardboard boxes like we have never had cardboard boxes in the history of cardboard boxes right now. They are everywhere. So those are some ideas. Add something new to the sensory table in your classroom. So sensory tables get stale frequently. We'll either have water or sand and call it done. Some other things you can add to sensory table are maybe it's fall, so you go outside and you find some different oak leaves to fill it up with. Maybe you are driving, some of you are near China Grove, so maybe you're driving and you see somebody's baling hay or something. You'd say, hey, can I have hay? Can I have some of your hay to put in my sensory table for the kids to mess around with? Maybe you could put, I'm thinking non-choking hazards, but most of you have kids over 3. If it's snowing outside, dump some snow in it. That doesn't happen very often, but it's a thing you can totally do. If it's a no snow year, you can freeze some water in blocks in the freezer and put those in the sensory table for them to see how it comes apart. You can put, let me grab this real quick. You can put I actually have a little set of science tools that I got off Amazon, different kinds of syringes and tubing that you can hook up to it, little pipettes, different size syringes, and little plastic beakers and stuff. And if you used colored water, oh my goodness, very motivating. So adding something new and different to the sensory table is a good way to be creative. We talked about the empty boxes. You could bring in some open-ended materials for your block area. Low-hanging fruit, you could bring in tubes from wrapping paper, from paper towels. I don't think we're allowed to use toilet paper tubes anymore because of where they live most of the time. But paper towel tubes are still cool. You could go to fabric stores and get those really thick paper tubes that material are wound on. Let's see, what else could you add to the block area? Can you think of something you could add to the block area that would be creative? Lisa, I see you put magnifying glass. That would be really cool to take outside. Especially with one of those field guides that we talked about last time with all the different kinds of birds and flowers and things. That'd be really cool with a magnifying glass. So the question right now is, what is something creative you could add to your block area? And something else I could show. Let's see what we have. I'm seeing scarves, cars, animals, paper and pencils to make a blueprint. It's also nice to have the a hard like clipboard to go with that. Wooden cars. I also ran rulers, nice. People, I'm assuming you mean toy people. Toy tools. You can also grab packaging material that you might, like this is a tin I saved from tea. It doesn't have any sharp objects on it or anything, but I think it'd be really fun to use like as a cave or as a car park, something like that. Balls, very good to have balls in the block area because you can use ramps. And if you have little marbles and then maybe bigger rubber balls and wooden balls and yarn balls, they can see how friction and gravity affect those. You can also just put rocks, depending on your kids. If you have kids that throw things wildly, you don't want to put rocks, but the different sizes and shapes are cool. I see puppets. I had one teacher that brought me a branch from the play yard and said, I would like this branch cut into 2-inch and 3-inch sections, please. So you can make your own nature blocks pretty easy, especially if you know somebody that has a good table saw that'd be willing to just hit those for you. All right, so very good. You could also add scraps of cloth to a block area because that'd make very interesting structures if they have something sheer to look through or lighter that they could tap down. Also, does everybody remember making forts when you were a child and stretching material between chairs and like the sofa and crawling underneath it? That never gets old for kids. And it's a really good physics lesson too, trying to make that so it doesn't collapse on you. All right. Now let's talk about process over product. Usually for art projects, we focus on the end result. We want to be able to hang on our wall a bunch of things that look very similar. So like on the left here, you see the butterflies that have been cut out. They're all the same shape. They all have the same center part of the butterfly and the same antenna going on. That is focusing on the product. The teacher wants you to see a row of butterflies that look very similar. The point of the lesson may have been to do that folding art, but the kids kind of get lost in that because the teacher's so focused on let's cut it out perfectly. Let's make sure we color all our antenna the same. On the right page, the picture there could have been the same lesson without the teacher focusing on the let's make it all the same thing. So just the symmetry art, you know, where you put down the globs on one side, you fold it, and you see the symmetry. So it's the same concept that they're teaching in both of these. One of them is showing you that they focused more on the outcome and the other one's focused more on the objective of symmetry art. Some things you know the teacher focuses on are when you walk down the hallway and you see outside on the wall a bunch of, it's usually paper plates that all have maybe a handprint in the center of them during Thanksgiving, right? The Thanksgiving turkey handprint with all the perfectly cut out turkey feathers that are stuck at the end, and then everybody's eye and beak look the same. That is because the teacher's like, okay, we're going to put our hand in this brown paint. Now pick it up. Now stick it on the plate right here. Pick it up. Now I've cut out these feathers for you. Stick those to your fingers on the plate. Now put it to the side. I'm going to draw the beaks and the faces for you during nap time. That's focusing on the product. The teacher wants something pretty to give the families. So the families know that the teacher's a good teacher because they gave something of a high quality to the family. But teachers focus way too much on the product and not on the process of doing the art. I can give you an example. I used to work for a painting studio in town where we would have kids come in for birthday parties, and the instructors would have to go and draw in pencil the image on the canvas, then tell the kids how to paint the image. Then the kids would go have cake, and we would stay back in that room and fix the image so that the families would have a lovely painting to take home with them. That's focusing on the product. I'm going to show you a few examples now, and I want you to tell me if it's process or product. And you can shout it out. Well, probably not shouting, depends where you're sitting. You might want to just say it. So I want to know process or product. You can put it in the chat too.
Oh,
Process or product. And I'm not saying this is ugly. I think this is absolutely delightful to look at, but it doesn't really focus on teaching the process to the kid. Something lovely at the end. Okay, I'm seeing everybody's putting product. You are.
only me.
All right, let's look at the next one. Process or product? You are correct. This is a focus on a product. Did somebody just say love it? That's awesome. Yes, this is focusing on a product rather than teaching the kids a process or to be creative. You know it because they all look the same. Process or product?
Process, I think. Yeah.
I think so too. Now, how is this different than the other ones? Why did we guess process on this?
Go.
Because nothing's gonna come out the same.
Mm-hmm. And it looks like children did it. It didn't look like an adult fixed it. And this is a nice lesson you can do, especially during fall, where the kids can go and collect leaves outside and learn how to do printing with the leaves. It helps them focus on the shapes of the leaves, and you can pull out that field guide like we talked about and identify what kinds of trees these different leaves come from. And they can choose their own colors. It's not just the teacher saying, let's pick the colors of fall. You discuss with the kids, well, what colors should we use? And let them come up with it. And if you get a bright magenta pink leaf, that's okay. Okay, how about this one? Process or product?
Oh.
It still has leaves on it. It's definitely a product because you could bet there's 20 others just like it sitting in the hall, sitting on the wall, ready to be taken home to show what a good artist the teacher is. All right, here's our last one for you to guess. Process or product? I agree. I think this is a process one too. You can tell the teacher didn't have a go at it. The only thing that maybe the teacher had a hand in was talking to the kids about, okay, what color are stems and leaves? Because they're suspiciously all green here, but that's okay. All right, well done. So the reason we want to focus on process is because we want the children to be creative. We want them to actually learn the objective and not focus on how to make it pretty at the end. And we don't want them to focus on making it exactly like everybody else's. All right. We are going to watch a video now. It's a song that came out, I think, in the 70s. It's by Harry Chapin. Chapin? Stop that. I wanted to talk about it first. The reason this song is going to be used today is because I've heard an interview with the writer of the song, and he said a teacher wrote him a note home that said, your child marches to the beat of their own drum, but don't worry, soon I will have them marching along with everybody else. And that poor just lost it and wrote this song. I think it's very poignant. So I'm going to give a few minutes for us to listen to it, and then we can talk about it. Krista, I can see your face easily. When I start it, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear and see it well?
Boom, boom, boom. A little boy went first day at school. He got some crayons and he started to draw. He put colors all over the paper, for colors was what he saw. The teacher said, what you doing, young man?
I'm painting flowers, see?
Well, this is not the time for art, young man. And anyway, flowers are green and red. There's a time for everything, young man. A way things should be done. You got to show concern for everyone else. You're not the only one. And she said, flowers are red, green leaves are green. There's no need to see flowers anymore, the way they always have been seen. But the little boy said,
there are so many colors of the rainbow, so many colors in the morning sun, so many colors in the flower, and I see everyone.
Well, the teacher said, you're sassy. There's a way that things should be, and you'll paint flowers the way they are. So repeat after me. She said, flowers are red, green leaves are green. There's no need to see flowers any other way than the way they always have been seen. But the little boy said again,
there are so many colors in the rainbow, so many colors in the morning sun, so many colors in the flower, and I see everyone.
Well, the teacher put him in a corner. She said, it's for your own good, and you won't come out till you get it right, responding like you should. Well, finally he got lonely. Frightening thoughts filled his head, and he went up to that teacher, and this is what he said.
Flowers are red, green leaves are green. There's no need to see flowers any other way than the way they always have been seen.
Well, time went by like it always does. He moved to another town, and the little boy went to another school, and this is what he found. The teacher there was smiling. She said painting should be fun, and there are so many colors in a flower, so let's paint everyone. And that little boy painted flowers in neat rows of green and red. And when the teacher asked him why, this is what he said.
Flowers are red, green leaves are green. There's no need to see flowers any other way than the way they always have been seen.
But there must still be a way to have our children say, there are so many colors in the rainbow, so many colors in the morning sun, so many colors in a flower, and I see everyone. There are so many colors in a rainbow, so many colors in the morning sun, so many colors in a flower, and I see everyone.
Let me stop that share. All right. So if you're anything like me, you probably had a tear in your eye towards the end of that when the kid was like, flowers are red and green leaves are green. And they're painting little neat rows, just like the teacher had trained them. So can you tell me what we can learn from this song? What is our takeaway? What is the point? I give my proper wait time. All right, I see somebody put in chat, let kids be creative. Somebody put in the chat that roses are red. That is the wrong takeaway from the video. Thank you very much. Staying positive. Oh. Krista put that eventually children's creativity will be stolen from them and we'll have a hard time thinking outside the box. All children are different and learn in different ways. Let them express themselves. Let them be creative in their own way. I think, oh, here we go. We've got some more. Good. Let them be kids. I'll be quiet for a couple minutes more. This is good. That might have been the last one on there. Okay. I think it shows the power of a teacher because it had two different teachers in there. The first teacher was very set in his or her ways on what a flower was and how it needed. And the second teacher was all about letting the children use what colors they wanted and express themselves creatively. We had some more things pop in the chat to let them explore the possibilities of the world around them. It's okay to think differently, and sometimes the wrong answer can be the right answer. Totally. Plus, that first teacher could have gotten around it a little bit by bringing in some roses. If you go to even HEB to get roses, are roses only red? No, right? So even if you wanted to be facts are facts, it would be better to bring in the actual object to let the children look at and discover rather than say, you know what, it's red, it's green, that's it. If you even look, who here has had a red rose in your garden at one point in your life or gone and explored a red rose in a garden before? If you look at it, is it all the same color red? There's usually different colors in the petals. They get darker towards the bottom. If you look at the leaves, they're not all the same color green. Lori, I see your hand up. Is that you've seen a flower or do you have a question?
I didn't touch anything. I think it did it all on its own.
Okay. Zoom is acting without you now. So even if you're a teacher that says, you know what, there is a way to see this and to know it, it's better to bring in the actual object and let the kids explore it and see what colors they can find on it, rather than you just saying, you know what, this is red, and that's it.
That's what I'm doing.
This
right
is the
now.
color we're using. Instead, it would be better for the teacher to bring all three primary colors, the white and the black, and let the children experiment and mix and try to find the colors they're seeing in the flower. And it's okay if they decide that, you know what, I'm going to make my rose this color. And that's fine. It's fine. If you ever go to a museum of art, you will see that quite a bit of artistic license is taken in choosing colors for things. And those are the paintings that people stay at and consider longer. So those Renaissance portraits and stuff that everybody looks almost photo real, usually people will like, oh, that's a lovely painting, and move on and go and stop in front of something else that has some wild lines on it, or a face made up of different kinds of fruit or whatever, because it's more interesting. So allowing children that creativity and that interest is really important. Thank you for participating in that. I hope I didn't make anybody cry, because I know the first couple dozen times I saw it, I had a tear. Oh, I had the wrong. Let me take that down. There we go. So anyway, the name of that song is Flowers Are Red, if you ever want to share it with anybody. It's by Harry Chapin, I believe, Chapin. It's from, I believe, the 70s, based on what he was dressed during the interview. I believe that was the 70s. All right. And they do have different versions of it. The version I showed you is one that has the children's voices on the chorus, and I think that adds a little something. So, all right, for being creative in your classroom, it is important to create a safe space for children. When I say a safe space, I don't mean like the cozy corner, which is again a safe space, but I mean making your classroom, the whole classroom, a safe space for children to express ideas. So children need to be supported in sharing their ideas and trying new things without automatically being shut down. I'm sure everybody has an experience in your life where you wanted to try something or you wanted to make a comment and the person just said, nope, that's not going to work, and just moved on without listening to you more or considering it further. After they shut you down once or twice, you usually stop giving suggestions. Is that right? So let's say I'm trying to think of a family member that would be stereotypical with, maybe a father or something. You're having conversations with them and maybe it's a stereotypical fatherly project like building something in the backyard. And you have ideas, oh, I think we should use, this kind of wood, or I think we should build it this way. After the first couple suggestions are like, nope, that's not how we're doing it. You usually just stop and say, okay, what do you want me to do? Just tell me what you want me to do. And that's the same for kids. So if they come up to you and say, Miss, could we try this? You have some options. You can either immediately say, no, go use the toys that I gave you, or you can talk about it with them. So for example, let's say, I'm gonna give you an example that I saw in a 4-year-old room once, and I use this example a lot. The kids wanted to make a bridge from one side of the classroom to the other side. And they were being creative, and they went and they grabbed all the library books, laid them out on the floor open, and started walking across them to get from one side of the room to the other. Very creative, also very destructive for the books. So instead of just shutting them down, I talked them through, okay, what do you think this is doing to our library books? What are you trying to accomplish? And they say, well, we want to make a bridge. Okay, well, we can't break the library books. What can we make the bridge with? And you can have that creative conversation with the kids, figuring out what materials would be best to fulfill their plan. You can reinforce the child's ideas when you see them doing something that you think is creative by describing what you're seeing. So for example, you're doing a coloring project with the kids, and one of the kids turns the crayon on its side, because usually by the end of the year, none of your crayons have wrappers on them anymore. So they've turned it on their side and they're coloring on the side. You could say, instead of going, wow, that's creative, you could say, oh, Abby, you're using your crayon in a different way. You're using it on the side and it's making thicker lines. That's again, getting that internal motivation. Instead of just telling them, good job, that's creative, everybody look at Abby, you can say, wow, you're using it in a different way. That's very creative. I see it's making different lines for you. So instead, pointing out what they're doing, and you can reinforce with them, wow, that was a creative thing to do. Because for that self-concept, for children to understand who they are, sharing with them that you think they're creative when they do something is kind of cool. As you're growing up, you would like to have that personal identity of being a creative person. And I still have the chat open if anybody has any questions about the safe space thing. It's allowing children to come up with ideas and share them with you and try new things while keeping the classroom from devolving into chaos. All right. So for your environments to promote creativity, we talked about open-ended materials a couple times. Those are materials that have more than one way to use them. So this could be an open-ended material. It started as a tee box. It could now be a parking garage for cars. It could be a hat. It could be a step stool. It could be a chair. It could be
A ramp.
a what?
A ramp from the cars.
Okay, a ramp for cars, totally. But this is open-ended. It's got possibilities. You can do multiple things with a box. Same thing with a tube. Lots of different things you can do with a tube. Paint, a very good open-ended material. Lots of different things you can create with that. A closed-ended material. Do I have a closed-ended material up here? For example, would be a puzzle. It only has one right way to use it. That would be a closed-ended material. I don't think I have any closed-ended materials up here. Honestly, I'm looking around. Oh, yeah, I have one more closed-ended material. Two more. All right, here is one of my closed-ended materials, a bucket balance. Only one right way to use that. And we don't want to be using it as a catapult launcher because it'll break it. And then another open-ended material is the hand lens, because there are only certain ways you can use it without breaking it and scratching it up. So that would be something that would only have one right way to use it. So we want to have a lot of open-ended materials so children can be creative with their endeavors. Can anybody write an open-ended material, an example of an open-ended material like this, like this, like this, in the chat box. Can you write an example of an open-ended material? Open. Wooden spoon, definitely. I apologize for everybody that went to a school where a wooden spoon has bad connotations. Or had a family member where that gives you a flashback. Apologize. Construction paper, definitely open-ended material. Lots of things you can make with paper. Beads. Beads could be taken to the home area and made into food. They could be put in, squished into Play-Doh as decoration. They can be put on a string as a necklace. Lots of things you can do with beads. Any other ideas? Open-ended material. Paper plates, sure. Shoebox boxes, love boxes for that. Pasta noodles, okay. Those would be interesting in a sensory table or in an art area, gluing them down or making necklaces. Glitter, ooh, there is a brave person right there. Cereal, sure, kind of like the noodles. Paper bag, We've made a lot of puppets over the years with paper bags, I'm sure. Play-Doh, definitely. Water bottles, yep. I have an example of in an infant toddler playground once, I had a student fill up the 3-liter or 2-liter bottles with colored water and seal the top really well. And the kids carried those around almost like babies. So very, very interesting, the water bottles. Also good for that ring toss game. Okay, it seems like you have a fairly good handle on what an open-ended material is. Provide opportunities for outdoor creativity. So you can do, we talked about playing balls and babies outside. We talked about the water table or a sensory table. Sand is really good for a creative medium, especially if you put some water on it. A good no mess activity outside is to just have buckets of water, you know, that kids can carry, and paintbrushes that they can paint fences and paint playground equipment with the water and see the different colors as it dries. You could also mix up some like chalk paint or something to paint on the walkways after you approve it with your principal, of course. All right, next on environments, it talks about how you display your materials so children can see them easily. So some classrooms, I'm sure you've known in the past, have so much stuff on their shelves that when you look at it, you can't really tell what's there. It's all just crammed together because the teacher's like, I want the kids to be creative, so I'm going to put all these things that actually kind of backfires on you because the kids need to see and know what's available in order to be creative with it. So for my people that are bakers and people that cook frequently, if you have a pantry full of ingredients, you are more than likely going to only notice the ingredients that are on the shelf to the front of you that you can see easily. So you're going to look at the things you can see easily on the shelf, and you're going to decide, what am I making for dinner? And pick a couple things you can easily see off the shelf and go make dinner. You're not going to say, you know what, let me dig through behind all these shelves and see what is in the back of my pantry to make dinner with. You're going to use what you see in the front. It's the same thing for the kids on the shelves. You want to put things displayed in a way that they can just take a glance at it, see what's there, and make their choices. That's another reason we label things. It's not just for communication and developing literacy. It's also to help kids make decisions on what they're going to use. And then last but not least is provide places where children can display what they've created at their eye level. So that's a big deal for children. Everything in the classroom that is for the children to look at should be down about their height or lower. Why? Because when things are way up towards the top of the ceiling, you're less inclined to look at them. Think again about the pantry and making dinner. Let's say you have a 12-foot tall pantry. Are you going to be looking up at the top of the pantry to try to figure out what to cook with? You're going to be looking around at things you can easily access. So put things down where they can see them easily and think about them and make decisions. The teachers, I've seen at pre-K for SA, usually set off a part of the classroom and say, this is where you can display your artwork. They usually give the kids that blue painter's tape. Does everybody know what that stuff is? It doesn't pull paint off walls like masking tape does. And let the kids rip off a piece and choose where they put their artwork and choose what artwork goes up. So after the child finishes their picture of their house, they can decide, am I taking this home or do I want to put it on the wall? And they can make that choice. Because internal motivation, if they want to share it out with other people or if they just want to keep it for themselves and their family. All right. Also for environments, decorate the walls with children's artwork and writing samples rather than posters that you don't use. A lot of classrooms will have various and sundry posters of, like say, the stereotypical kitten hanging on a branch that says hang in there. We don't really use those posters for anything. So it'd be better to have the blank wall and then space for kids to put their artwork. Designate spaces indoors and outdoors where children can be messy. I applaud the person that says they will allow glitter in their classroom. Good for you. That's not a typical thing. Some messy materials that are typical in the classroom are, again, the paint, watercolor paint, Play-Doh. What else do we use that's messy in the classroom to play with normally? Anything else? Maybe a sensory table, probably not during a time of COVID, but in a typical year. Glue, definitely, that's messy, especially if you're a fan of the liquid glue over the glue sticks. Cut paper, yeah, so all those little bits of paper get stuck in the carpet. It's better to have the cleanable surface underneath. So letting the children know where they can be messy, and this is the messy zone, go for it. And also teaching them how to keep up their classroom community. It's not all about creating the mess, it's also knowing, okay, I've created this mess. The next step is for me to clean the paintbrushes, sweep up where I just dropped all the paper, and put things back on the shelf where they belong. And making that a part of the routine and not a punishment at the end that we're going to clean it all up. All right, follow a schedule that includes at least 1 hour blocks of time. The reason we want blocks of time instead of short little jumps is it takes time to get creative. Has anybody ever gone to a children's museum with a child before? When you're at a children's museum, everything is new. It's kind of a novelty effect. Everything's new, everything's different and shiny. The child will be like a bumblebee and just flit from one area to the next, sampling, and never really getting deep into their play. In order to be creative, the children need to know what materials are there, how to use them, and have time to develop their ideas over a day, over a week. And if you allow your children to develop ideas, they take things further and further. So let's say you have introduced your primary colors to the art area. Day one, you're probably going to have the kids painting red, blue, and yellow. And maybe one creative child just out of left field has mixed them all together and made brown. But usually it's just red, blue, and yellow. If, however, this stays out over an extended period of time, the kids will start experimenting. How do I make purple? I want to make purple. How do I make green? And so over time, they develop the skills due to having the time and the space to experiment. And the last one on this page is taking photographs and documenting the creative process. So why do you want to do that? It's lovely if you have a project that's an extensive project to document all the stages of it. So let's say, for example, you want to do a classroom garden outside. Let's say you bring in all the different seeds and have a day where the children choose the seeds. You're taking pictures. Let's say you have a day where you have the garden drawn out on a piece of paper and they have their measuring tapes and they're figuring out how big each plant is going to be. And you take a picture. Let's say the next day you take the children outside and you scoop all the dirt into the planting bed with shovels. Take a picture. And that keeps going. Then, as your project progresses, you're putting these pictures along with descriptions down where the children can see them on the wall. So they can revisit their learning and think about what happened in the past. Oh, I see that our broccoli plant is getting really big outside. Do you remember the day we measured how much space that broccoli plant would be? Let's go look at the picture. How much space did we say the broccoli plant would need? Oh, it needs 18 inches. Wow, let's go take our tape measure outside and see if that's how big it really grew. And that leads to a deeper discussion than if you didn't have the things up, the broccoli plant is big, and you ask the kids, hey, do you remember when we measured out the broccoli, where it was going to go? Some of them will say, maybe. And others will go, we measured the broccoli? I don't know. That wasn't a thing. That didn't happen. So it's much better to have the pictures to go back and revisit and think about. For kids, it's even nice to take pictures of things they've created in the classroom that they're proud of. So this is very typical in the block area. If you have children create a really elaborate structure in the block area, it's nice for them to come tell you, I'd like a picture of this. Take a picture. And over time, you can get those pictures printed out and put them in a notebook so that they can go back and see what they've created in the past to help them make something bigger going forward. Any questions on any of this? I'm not seeing any in the chat. I can't see everybody's face, so I don't know if you're waving your hand around. You are going to have to either yell out or put it in the chat if you have a question. Think about yourself. If you go on a super fun family trip, odds are you're going to take pictures. Why? Why are you bothering to document it? Want to put in the chat to remember? Vanessa said memories. Totally. It helps to have something to look at to trigger the memory. I live with, let's say, I don't want to say seniors. What's another way to put it? People who are, well, can't even come up with it right now. Anyway, I live with some older folk, and we create a lot of memory books of trips they've been on and write explanations under it, because if you do a lot of good stuff, like in the classroom, you're doing a lot of good stuff with kids. It all kind of gets jumbled together, right? If you did a measuring project one week for the garden, maybe the next week you do a measuring project for how tall is everybody. And it kind of gets jumbled in your memory. If you have those images and explanations around the room in the library area, they can easily go back and look, and it jogs the memory and helps create a community around, oh yeah, I do remember when we did that. Look, that you were doing this, you were using the shovel like this, sticking the dirt. It's very helpful. And thank goodness now that printing a color picture is not the hassle it was a decade or two ago. It's fairly straightforward now. And you can even laminate it in plastic if you want to keep it around for a while. Another thing you can do with those photos, if you have communication with families, you know, to help. Families don't only want to know things that are going wrong in the classroom, they like to know things that are going well. So if you have a communication method with your head teacher and the families, you can say, wow, we took a really good picture of Liam and his block building today. I bet his family would like to see that. And you can find a way to send it to them. All right. Let's talk for a moment about creativity versus chaos. So every single one of us have a different internal alarm system that goes off when a certain amount of noise or mess happens in your classroom. You get triggered at a certain level, and everybody's level is different. So let's say, Ruby, that you are okay with your kids having a grand time yelling in the classroom right up until it's 5 minutes. And at 5 minutes, you can feel your headache starting. And you say, done, quiet, everybody sit down. We're now gonna have some quiet time. Everybody sit, shush, shush, red light, shush, quiet, everybody sit. That's 5 minutes is Ruby's mark. Let's say, however, Marbella can't mess with that at all. So like at 1.5 minutes, Marbella's like, nope, nope, quiet, I'm done. We're too loud in here, shush. So everybody has an internal measurement of how much is too much. Same thing for mess. So the person that said glitter in the chat, their mess level must be right up here. They're okay with it. Bring on the sparkles. But let's say Vanessa's mess meter for the classroom is down here. She says, I don't even want liquid glue on my tables. We're getting glue sticks. Okay. You all have been in a situation in your life, in your classroom, where you could feel you were about to go off because of noise or mess. I have something clicking here. Let me just see, because I know I told you all you could text me as well. Okay, we're good. You need to know your own level. Okay. When you hit your level, but when you're getting close to it, you need to stop and take a moment to think before you react. Pause and think. Right now, is what bothering you? Is it hurting anybody? Is that glitter on the table or that puddle of glue on the table hurting anybody? Probably not. Is it hurting a material? So is the puddle of glue on the table hurting a material? Probably not. Is it breaking a rule? Probably not. So that's the first thing you need to assess. Is what's going on hurting somebody, a material, or breaking a rule? If it doesn't hurt somebody, hurt a material, or break a classroom rule, you need to do that like self-breathing thing to calm yourself down. Like take a step back and breathe. Take a minute, think about it, and think to yourself, do I actually need to intervene? So that puddle of glue on the table, do I need to intervene right now? Is the child still creating their project and still using the glue? If they are, maybe I should wait until they're done. Am I getting super upset that the kids are loud? Yes. Why are they loud right now? You know, stop and take a minute. Why are they being loud? Are they being loud because they're having a debate about the best place to plant the broccoli in the garden? Ooh, that sounds educational. Maybe I should wait a minute. Or are they being loud because they're running in circles and getting ready to fall over? That's different, right? So you need to step back, take a minute, breathe, and figure out, is this something I need to jump in on or not? For myself, I check and see, is it anybody getting hurt? Is any material breaking, or is it breaking a rule? If it's not, then I need to do a self check-in and figure out what I can do to make myself feel better about this situation. Okay, now we have some ideas here in black and we have some in purple. The ones in purple are for younger children. Now, are all the children in your classroom at the same developmental level? No. So we'll talk about both of these, because sometimes you can ask the children the question in black, and other times you might have to ask the question for a younger child just because that's where this child is developmentally. So if you see the kids doing something that you think is destructive, so let's talk again about the book bridge that I mentioned. The kids have created a bridge out of textbooks or books from the library, and they're walking on them. Why is that a problem? Why is it a problem for the kids to be walking on the books? Because they're going to ruin the books, right? That's a problem. We can't let them ruin the material. So that goes back to this. It's hurting the material. You want to have nice things in your classroom. You can't let them kill the books. So here are some things you can do to address that instead of just shutting it down. Okay. You could start by going, so you're not going to flip out. Flipping out never helped anybody. Very calmly approach the children. If they're older, you can say, tell me about what you're doing. What's going on here? If you approach it calmly, the kids will probably just tell you exactly what's going on, because they're like, oh, teacher's interested in what I'm doing. Let me share with you, teacher, what we're doing. This is awesome. It's creative. Come look. We're building a bridge out of books. Okay, so that's your answer for number one. Tell me about what you're doing. If the children are younger, maybe if you ask them that question, they're just going to be like, I'm not talking to you right now. So for a younger child or a child that doesn't communicate it as easily, you can describe what you're seeing. Okay. You can say, I see you have the books laid out in a row and are walking on them. Okay. So you can either ask them what they're doing or you can describe what you're seeing. Does that make sense to start with? You either ask them what's going on, tell me about it, what's going on, or I see this happening. Describe what you're seeing. For example, let's say you see the kid with a magnifying glass and they're taking it and they're like this on the concrete. I have seen this before. I nearly died. So you'd walk up to them because this is already dead, right? There's no saving it at this point, but you still want to address it. You just don't say, well, that's dead. Let me throw it away and give them a new one. You address it. You walk up. For an older child, tell me about what you're doing there. What's going on? What are you doing? For a younger child, I see you rubbing the hand lens on the concrete. Okay, that's your first step. Second step for the older child, what do you think will happen to the hand lens? What do you think will happen to the hand lens while you're rubbing it on the concrete? What do you think is happening to the material? With the book example, what do you think is happening to those books as you're walking on them? That's getting the kids to think with you, think it out, right? You're wanting them to learn how to think these cause and effect things out for themselves. So you start out by asking them, or, you know, what's going on here? What you doing? Then start with, what do you think is going to happen to the material doing that? What do you think is happening to the hand lens while you're doing that? Why don't you pick it up and take a look? What's happening to the hand lens? What's happening to the book while you're walking on it? For a younger child, you can't really ask them, what do you think will happen? Because they're not going to respond to you. Instead, you could tell them what is happening to it. You are scratching the hand lens when you're rubbing it on the concrete. Look at it, pick it up, let's look. See, you're scratching the hand lens, okay? You are with walking on the books, you are damaging the books. Look at the pages, they're getting all creased and folded. So again, for number 2, you can either ask the child to think through it with you. What is happening to the material while you're doing that? What do you think will happen while you're doing this? What could happen? Think with me, what could happen in this scenario? If they're younger, you're telling them what you see happening or what could happen. And then the last part is finding a way to ask them, okay, so I see you're trying to make something to walk on. How else could we do that? You can't use the books. What else can we do? I see that you're doing this. Try to figure out why they're doing this. Are they doing it because they like rubbing things on the concrete? Are they doing it because they like the sound? Are they doing it because they want to play with this and they don't know how to play with it? So figure out why, and then help them accomplish their goal properly. So okay, y'all, let's say the reason they're doing this is they like the sound of the scratching on the concrete. What is one way we could suggest that they could still hear that sound and not damage something? Rub 2 sticks together? Sure, you could try it and see if it makes the same sound. Any other ideas? Give them a rock. So maybe rubbing the rock on the concrete would make a similar sound. Rub the stick on the concrete. Sure. Sandpaper. So does everybody have those sandpaper blocks in music still? Those might make a similar sound. So the goal is to help them be creative in ways that are productive and not destroying your things. Okay? So again, on number 3, we help them think through what's another way you can get that thing you're wanting. You're wanting to build a bridge. You can't use the books because it's damaging the books. What can we use to build a bridge? You're wanting to hear the sound, the scratching on the concrete. What else can we use to scratch on the concrete? Because you can't use this, it is destroying it. It's scratching it. For younger children, you have to be more specific. So let's say they're wanting to do the scratching on the concrete. You can ask them straight up, what else can you scratch on the concrete that won't hurt? Could we use a stick? Could we use the sandpaper? Could we use a rock? Let's go find it together. That's how you reframe it instead of shutting them down. So gut reaction for me, when I saw this on the concrete, I nearly died because these were new. And I had, I very, very calmly ran up to the child and was like, no, you can't do that. What are you doing? Stop. That wasn't helpful. They were doing it for a purpose. It would have been better if I had figured out what that purpose was explain to them why this shouldn't be scratched, and help them come up with another idea instead of just shutting them down and saying, go play on the slide instead. Go somewhere else. Stop what you're doing. Go play over there. Does that make sense? Does anybody have a question about reframing destruction? Okay, we are recording again. Liz, I see your face. Can you still see the slide? Yes or no? Thank you. All right. So we talked a bit about how to reframe destructive creativity. The reframing the destructive thing can also work if you see children that are playing a little too exuberantly or are trying something out that you're like, that is not going to end well. You can also reframe it that way. So we could go back to the example that they're running in circles in the block area. You could, pause them for a minute. Tell me about what you're doing. What do you think is going to happen if you keep running in circles in the block area? Okay, what can we do instead? So you can use it on behavior as well to an extent. All right, let's talk about promoting creativity through visual art. And visual art is usually considered to be painting, drawing, coloring, creating sculptures. All these things are visual art. Off the top of your head in the chat, can you please put the name of a famous artist that you like? Okay, I'm seeing Picasso. I'm going to ask the question again because I think perhaps some folks did. I'm asking y'all to think about one famous artist whose work speaks to you and putting their name in the chat. I see two names. I see Picasso and I see Alexandre Cabanel. I do not know that one, but I'm out of the loop on artists right now, so that's not surprising that I wouldn't know it. Any others? Jesse Trevino, I did know that one. Three-year-olds in class are the best. Good answer, Ruby. Aside from your three-year-olds, do you know any well-known artists' work that speaks to you? Van Gogh, okay. Don't have one? Okay. One that's really popular in San Antonio, aside from Jesse Trevino, is the works of Frida Kahlo. She's really popular right now. Or her husband, Diego Rivera. Jackson Pollock is always a fun one to talk about with children because his is a bunch of splatter marks all over a page, and I can't think of anything that'd be more fun for a classroom of kids than throwing paint all over the place. There's Theobald, who did pictures of cakes. So there's lots of artists that have done artwork that is suitable for children to look at. As always, you should look at it before sharing it with the children, because some things that are fine for one group of families are not fine for another group of families. But yeah, just for funsies real quick, let me pull up Google and see what we can find for child-friendly artwork in here. Just some random person's blog and see what they came up with. That one looks like it'd be interesting to teach math and measurement with. Matisse, that's paper cutting. So you could teach the concept of using cut paper as artwork with Matisse. Vincent van Gogh, you could talk about how they used little bits of paint instead of blocks of color, or how they used the shapes in the air. This is Seurat, that is pointillism, using little dots of color to create an image. Monet, same thing, using dots of color. Warhol, using things that you see every day to create artwork. Klimt. My bad, I thought that was Kandinsky, it's Klimt. Pollock, the paint splatters. Georgia O'Keeffe, which I tried one of those. Yeah, so you can do stuff like that. You can look up specifically. So if you're trying to meet anti-bias needs in your classroom, you can look for maybe like Mexican-American painters or Mexican painters or Salvadoran painters or whatever. Let's see what we come up with. Seeing Frida Kahlo, Diego Rivera. These are the two that are really popping. But the reason I even brought that up is, let me get back to the slide. Come on now. There we go. Is that children like to see things that have already been done as well, and it gives ideas. So if you were showing the, what was it? Picasso, I think it was, no, I can't remember the name of the painter right now, the one that did the paper cutting. Then you could talk about, well, some artists cut paper to make paintings. Let's look at some of their work and what kind of cut paper painting would you like to try to make? You could show Andy Warhol, you know, let's try to copy something that we really like. So maybe they bring in an empty box of Kraft macaroni and cheese. Okay, let's all try to paint the box of Kraft macaroni and cheese and make an Andy Warhol kind of painting. Those would be more teacher directed, where you say, you know, let's try something that has already been done, but it engages children in thinking about art. A child initiated would be the child saying, I want to make something, and you're there to support them and help them get the materials they need to do it. Child directed is, let's say you wanted to do that painting we saw at the beginning where they found outside and painted it and did printing. That could be child directed. You came up with the idea, let's go gather leaves, but you allow the children to direct where they're going to be on the paper, how they're going to do the printing, what colors they're going to choose. You proceed at the child's pace. You don't try to hurry them through an art experience. You will have children that once you get the leaves in and they get the paint out, they might just be fascinated by moving the brush through the paint. And that's where they stay for a while, and that's fine. If you have children that are slower with the activity and the activity time that you have set is done, you can say, okay, let's put it to the side. And when we have free choice time, you can do it again. Or I'll have the materials in the art area and you can do it during free choice during the week. And asking children to describe and discuss their artwork. We had spoken last time we were together about the child's painting and how we would comment on it. Instead of saying, oh, that looks like a rainbow. It's a rainbow, right? It's a good rainbow, good job. We would instead say, tell me about your artwork. I see, or you could describe something you're seeing. I see that you made an arc with different colored lines. Tell me about your artwork. Avoid worksheets and coloring sheets whenever possible. Children don't get a lot of creativity done on coloring sheets. Everything's been decided for them except for the color. Coloring sheets are really only good for, you know, fine motor, really trying to stay within lines. So that famous artist that you knew about, you could also think about putting some of the pictures of their artwork in the art area so that the children could consider different ways of creating art. All right, creativity through music and movement is next. Music and movement involves singing, moving, and playing instruments. So off the top of your head, what is, let me pull back up chat, it went away. Oh, thank you, Krista, for telling me it was Matisse. That's helpful. What are some songs? So maybe your favorite song. What is your favorite song to sing with the children? If you can put that in the chat, please. And it can even be one that you've created with them. It doesn't have to be a standard song. What's your favorite song to sing with the children? Okay, I'm seeing hello, friends. You might not have just one favorite, but if you have two favorites, you can still just pick one. Doesn't have to be. Oh, wow. Robot song, The Floor is Lava. Go Noodle Milkshake. Action Song by the Singing Walrus. Connie Cone, LOL. Hokey Pokey, I know that one. Gummy Bear, Skinnamarink. Happy is our wake up song. You're happy and you know it. Can't Stop the Feeling from Trolls. Anybody else? Everything is Awesome from the Lego Movie. You all sing these in class? Cool. Anybody else? Robot. I'm feeling out of the loop on some of these songs, y'all, which is probably good. Songs should move forward in time. All right. So a lot of these songs, we have space for creativity. Ideally, you wouldn't be playing the music every single time you do the song with the children. You would have times where you just sing it without the music, you and the children. The children don't care about the quality of your singing voice. So that is one of the few times outside of like singing in your car or singing in your shower that you can just belt it out with them. And no judgment, judgment-free zone on quality of singing voice. When you sing it without the CD, it gives you some more variety in how you can sing it, the tones and everything. Wording you can mix up a little bit. And going on to the next one, the moving with music, it's always lovely to choose songs or choose instrumentals that don't tell the children how to move all the time. So a lot of the songs that are made for music and movement tell the children how to move. So personally, not a really big fan of this song, but I'm sure some of you know it. Have you heard of A Tootie Ta? I'm gonna flip through and see if I have a few people that have heard of A Tootie Ta before. Yep. Okay. A Tootie Ta has only one way to move, correct? You have to follow the same thing every single time. It's right. What is it? Thumbs out or thumbs up, elbows in, tongue out, bottom up, knees together, all that stuff. You have to go in the order to do the song. So it's a good song to do, but it doesn't promote creativity. It promotes fun and a good time, but it doesn't promote creativity. Do you know of any music songs that you sing with children or songs that you put on to promote the children's creativity, where they get to choose how to move? Or that songs that you change how you move every time based on what the children want to do? Do you have any songs like that? If you do, put them in the chat. And I'll go first. I'll say the Wheels on the Bus. We do the Wheels on the Bus different every single time when I sing with children. I let them know what's next. I change up what the people on the bus are doing. I'll put grandma on the bus sometimes and she gets to do something interesting. I'm seeing the freeze song. The children get to move different ways before it yells freeze. Down by the Bay, they get to choose different lyrics to it each time. Hokey Pokey, that gets changed up almost every time as well, as long as the children get to choose which movement is next and how they're going to do it. Any other ideas? Okay. And then the last is playing instruments. So for the moving to music, have I brought my scarves out before? Have you seen, you know, how kids can move the scarves differently? That's one thing. You can also move their bodies. You know, they can move their hands in different ways to create different feelings in the room. They can move their bodies quickly or slowly due to the tempo. The easiest musical instruments are clapping and stomping and making sounds with your mouth. However, it's always nice to have variety of children love drums. I don't know if you all have ever noticed that. They're really big fans of drums. Do you remember in our physical chapter where we followed that one person that was doing the drumming routine on the table? So you could mix up something like that where they could do a drumming routine where the children pick different moves for parts of the song. If one of you said earlier that you play the guitar, that'd be a lovely thing to bring in and play some short songs for the children for them to sing and come up with words to. And about musical instruments, some teachers choose to hide those during the class day because they don't want the children making noise. You need to find something from your musical area that you can keep out whenever free choice is open. So if it's not the drums or it's not the really loud xylophone, you need to find some quieter musical instruments that you can add in that they can still play. One of the nicer ones that I've found is the cardboard cylinder of oatmeal. Have you all ever played an empty oatmeal container before? Those are really nice. The plastic lid has a dull reverb off it. You could play a shoebox. You could play a little Amazon box with your hands. Those things are fairly quiet as long as you don't have the stick to go with it. It's pretty quiet. You could also do, if you got somebody had a little electric piano, you could adjust the volume on it. You know, just a little keyboard that they can put in there as well. Options. All right, so music and movement can support children's total development. So you've got, we talked about it in the physical chapter, how you can move your whole body to music very easily. Cognitive, thinking about what patterns you can make with your body, the beat, the tempo. For language and literacy, especially for Down by the Bay, coming up with those rhyming words is really important. Social skills. Can anybody give me an example about how a music and or movement activity would help a child with their social skills. What social skills are they using during music and movement? Spatial awareness, totally. So how not to bounce off everybody. Turn taking. So when you call on one child at a time to add to a song or a dance, the others have to wait for that child and follow their lead. Definitely. And then emotional. Emotional could be that they're moving to how the music makes them feel. It could also be that emotional regulation for waiting for other children to do things and take turns and be a leader. Yep. So these bridges to these different domains, physical, cognitive, language, social, emotional, kind of tie back and forth together and build stronger connections. It makes the children's thinking more grounded. So if you're trying to do counting activities, having music and movement to go with the counting activities helps ground it in the child's mind better than just talking about it. All right. So being intentional about integrating music into your program's daily routines, thinking through what do I want my children to learn from this music experience, helps you design and choose activities to support specific developmental goals. Music, because it's so often shared with others in singing, dancing, and playing instruments together, is by its very nature a social experience. When we allow our students to have experiences with music activities, we're supporting their development in different areas. Okay, so we talked about the language and literacy and all that. So okay, not there yet. Socio-dramatic arts, so that is your home area in general, your dramatic play, fosters imagination, new ways of thinking, and problem-solving skills. When we talked earlier about open-ended materials, this is really helpful in the problem-solving skills and imagination. So let's say your children are playing mommy and baby, and the mommy wants to make some spaghetti, but you don't have the toy that is spaghetti in your home area. Mommy's going to look around and find some materials that look like they would be good in a soup pot. So she may choose some beaded necklaces that you have in the fine motor area to put in the soup pot to make spaghetti. She might choose to go grab some puzzle pieces out of an area to go dump in the soup pot. Problem solving skills, and also helping. So sometimes when they go to play mommy and baby, there are 3 girls that want to be mommy. And those are some problem solving skills, them working together socially to figure out who can be which role. And what is that person going to do during our game? And there's no right and wrong answers. If they decide all 3 of us are going to be mommy, fine. You're not going to walk in as the teacher and say, nope, you can only have 1, 2, whatever mommies. If all 4 of you want to be the mommy and there's no baby, that's okay too. And then storytelling and story retelling deepens understanding. This goes back to when we talked about putting the pictures of activities on walls. The kids can go back and revisit it and talk about what happened and make connections across time. This also works with your books that you have in your class. They can hear the same story lots of times and consider different parts about it. So maybe the first time you read It Looks Like Spilled Milk with the children, you talked about the shapes of the clouds. Maybe the next time you talked about it with them, you talked about how the artist portrayed the cloud shapes. Maybe the next time you talked about what kind of food that person liked to eat. So over time, you can discuss different aspects. Another way you can promote creativity in the home area is to just give the children a box of fabric scraps, like rectangles and circles of fabric, and give them some clothespins, and they can pin them up different ways to create different costumes and clothing ideas. That is more creative for them than having a small little prom dress and a firefighter outfit. Because they can make a lot of things with a piece of fabric, and their creativity than they can do with a costume that's already kind of set aside for one specific role. All right, now, have we done not a stick yet in this class, Liz? No? All right, so I'm going to pull that up then real quick.
No.
So there's some books called Not a Box and Not a Stick. I don't know if you all have seen them before, but we're going to look at Not a Stick real quick. And keeping in mind, there is Not a Box as well.
My job
Did you
is
hear
to
it?
make college easier because students have a
Yeah.
lot on their plates. Like Harper, an econ major who
All right, so let's give them a
Not
minute.
a Stick by Antoinette Portis. For Winston.
Hey, be careful with that stick.
It's not a stick.
Look where you're going with that stick.
What stick?
Watch where you point that stick.
This is not a stick.
Now what are you doing with that stick?
It's not a stick.
Don't trip on that stick.
I'm telling you, it's not a stick.
So, still standing around with that stick?
This is not a stick.
Okay, then what is it?
It's my not a stick. One more time.
No, once is enough. All right, so that book kind of gives you an example of an open-ended material, a stick, and the different ways a child can be creative and imagine what that stick is going to be. For those of you that have been in early childhood for a while, you might have had an issue in your class with swords or knives or guns or something like that, where they're pretending, if they have a toy gun, they'll pretend with that. If you take that away, then maybe they'll grab a block out of the block area, and that'll be the gun now. You take that away, then maybe it's the plastic cucumber from the home area that turns into it. So they can be creative and still come up with ways to fulfill their desire to play with a weapon, which, I mean, depends on your school, how you allow them to play such things, but they're going to get it done one way or another with their creativity. Right, let me pull down Not a Stick. There's also a book called Not a Box that shows the different ways that you can play with a box. And that's a nice one to read with children, because right before you do it, you can bring sticks or boxes or some other open-ended material to the classroom and have them come up with ways to use them. All right. Now is the time that we're going to consider what activity we're going to do for creative. I am going to pull up the pre-K guidelines for us to find an objective that we want to use today to make our activity. So let me go to Google, pre-K guidelines. There it is, Texas Pre-Kindergarten Guidelines. Go down. We're going to use the English one because that's what I speak the best. So it has the skill domains here in the chat. Please write the domain that you think we should check in for our creative lesson plan to find our objective. And we already discussed you could look in almost all of these and find something for creativity. But one of these stands out, I think. Okay, I think the overwhelming group consensus is fine arts. So I'm going to go to page 113. Let me try typing that up here. 111, 112, 113. All right, so let's look at these and pick one for our activity that we're going to create together. So let's read through all of them and then we'll pick one. The first one is child uses a variety of art materials and activities for sensory experience and exploration. So that's using a variety of materials for sensory and just to explore the materials. That's our first choice. Second choice, child uses art as a form of creative self-expression and representation. Choice number 3. Child demonstrates interest in and shows appreciation for the creative work of others. So that's it for fine art. Then it gets into music. Child participates in classroom music activities, including singing, playing musical instruments, and moving to rhythms. Child responds to different musical styles through movement and play. And then they have dramatic arts. Child creates or recreates stories, moods, or experience through dramatic representation. So they're acting out something. Okay, and that's it. So I'm going to say it'd probably be more difficult to do the acting out one right now. So let's just drop that altogether. And let's look at our choices in fine arts, drawing and stuff, and the music, and pick one. So here are our choices, okay? So write down on your little scratch paper the one you like the best, and then we'll put them in the chat and see which one wins. So the first one is A1. They use a variety of materials for sensory exploration. It's A1. A2, they use art as a form of creative expression. A3, they show appreciation for other people's artwork. B1, they participate in music activities. B2, they respond to different musical styles through movement and play. You've got 4 choices: A1, A2, B1, B2. I'll read them again while you're choosing. A1, they use a variety of art materials and activities for sensory experience and exploration. A2, they use art as a form of creative self-expression. A3, child demonstrates interest and shows appreciation for the creative work of others. B1, they participate in classroom music activities. And B2, they respond to different musical styles through movement and play. Cast your vote, and then we will pick one. I'm gonna go back to the top of this section of the chat so I can see what we've got going here. All right, let me make a little checklist for myself. I've got A2 for the first one. And this isn't going to be exact because it's a little difficult for me to scan through these. So 2 A2s, A1, A1, A1. Maybe if I make it bigger, it'll help. Yes, that does help. A2, A2, A1, A2, A1. I think A1 has it, y'all. All right, so let's go with A1. You do not have your special sheet today for your writing activities, okay? That's all right. I will bring a special sheet to you the next time I see you. If for some reason we do online again next time, I'll make sure to email them out to you so you have them. But for right now, most of you write it on scratch paper first anyway, so I think we'll be all right. So we have chosen this one. Let me make it go up a little bit. And find, if you will, in your binder, an old activity plan, one you've already done, and put it next to you so you can see the format. So you use the same format. Open your binder and find an old one. Just open it up to that page. You don't have to take it out. And get your paper and get something to write with. All right, if you don't have your binder, can somebody tell me the first thing that we put after titling the activity? The first thing we usually put on the activity. What's the first thing we look for? Feel free to shout it out. What is the first thing we're writing on our activity? Well done, Alejandro.
Title. The title?
We usually do the title last. It is at the top of the page, but we usually pick that last. The learning objective is one we just picked, however.
Okay.
So on your scratch paper, leave a space for title, but you're not putting it yet because you don't have anything to title yet.
Okay.
After that, learning objective.
Learning objective. Okay.
Okay, and here is our learning objective. I'm highlighting it. That's what you need to write. Let me make it bigger for you.
Yes, please. Sorry.
It's a little too big. There we go. So everybody should be writing down this learning objective on for their activity for creative today. We are doing it on a scratch piece of paper because we do not have a printout like we normally do for this. I will bring printouts the next time I see you and you can transfer the information. Okay, I'm going to flip through and see if anybody needs additional time writing this objective down. Looks like some people are still checking the screen, so I'll give them a couple more minutes. Irene, let me know when you're done, okay? Okay. Looks like everybody's done now. And if you're not done, you have the number at least, so you can go back and pull it later, or you can pull this YouTube video later and like scan forward until you see the pink box. So I'm going to make it a little smaller again. And let's see what suggestions they give in here for this one. So child uses a variety of art materials and activities for sensory exploration and experience. The teacher, so it has examples of the child's paper. I'm going to look on the teacher part first, because that might give us an idea of what to do. It says for teacher provides art materials that can be easily adapted for independent participation. So have different size brushes, different colors of paint, markers, modeling clay, cotton swabs, straws, etc. So that's having art materials, right, available. The next one, it says rotates materials in the art center on a regular basis. So keep things fresh in the art center. The next one says provides opportunities for exploration of the relationship of space and objects, as well as color, balance, texture, and design. So in parentheses, it says, this means opportunities to create sculptures. Okay, so art is not all on a piece of paper. It can be built up and be a sculpture as well. Little bear. Anyway, okay.
We're doing materials.
Right now, we're trying to pick what our activity is going to be by reading what the examples are on here. The next thing it says is calls attention to art within the environment. So if you're outside, drawing attention to the flowers that you're seeing on there and the colors, what the butterfly's wings look like, textures of the leaves on a tree. We talked about this after the song by saying the teacher could have just brought in some different roses for the children to examine. The next thing it says is provides time during the day for children to independently participate and experiment with textures and materials. Scaffolds children's thinking about artistic exploration by asking open-ended questions, such as, what happened when you mixed the red and the blue? And provide a space in the classroom for children to display their artwork. All right, that doesn't give us too many ideas for activities. Now let's look at a child's behaviors. Maybe that will give us some ideas. It said the child investigates with a variety of materials such as crayons, paint, clay, and markers. The child manipulates clay by rolling, pinching, squeezing, patting, and cutting. Does that remind you of an activity we already did? Manipulates modeling clay. We did that, I believe, for fine motor. The next one is mixes colors to make other colors. Red and yellow finger paint to make orange. Use different sizes of brushes to paint. Select a variety of materials in the art center for exploration. Comment on shape, space, texture, and create artwork inspired by music. Okay, there's a couple low-hanging fruit here that we could choose from. One of the low-hanging fruit could be this creates artwork inspired by music. That's where you like play music and then have the kids think about how it makes them feel and then create something around it. Another thing you could do would be this one, I think is a pretty low-hanging fruit, uses different sizes of brushes to paint. So for that one, you could just have a variety of brushes. So like we have a wider one, we have a foam brush, we have something that's falling, a palette knife, fan brush, skinny little brush, fluffy brushes. So that could be another low-hanging fruit. I think those are two choices we can easily pick between and vote. So if you, let's give a number to these, either number 1 or number 2. Number 1 is we do the uses different sizes of brushes to paint. And number 2 is we create artwork inspired by music. Please vote. Brushes or music? 1 or 2? I have not seen a 2 yet, so I'm thinking brushes is how we're going with this. Okay, brushes it is, y'all. So after we wrote the learning objective, that general one in the pink, let's add to it. So right after it, I'm going to make this brush thing bigger. Oops, too big. Let's add right after that, uses different sizes of brushes to paint. So right now on objective, after we wrote where we wrote the words that were in pink, we're adding to it uses different sizes of brushes to paint. That reminds us of why we're doing the activity. So if we get in the middle of the activity and we are like, wait, what is the point? What am I supposed to be focusing on? The focus is using different sizes of brushes to paint. Does anybody need additional time to write that? Okay. So now let's talk materials. You have some choices, and I'm going to let you make these choices individually. You can either, and here, let me pull up a new, I apologize, give me a moment. A new document so you can see. All right, so we already did our objective. Now we're thinking about materials. You need to choose what kind of paper you want to use. So if it was me and it was my first time doing it, I would probably go get that really big paper that is usually kept in the teacher's supply closet, like the butcher paper. I would get a piece and tape it down over the whole top of the table personally. So there'd just be like one big piece of butcher paper. However, if that doesn't work for you, what are some other ways you could do it? You could have just an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper for each child. That's something you could choose. Okay. Another thing you could choose is maybe you want to put a tablecloth on the table, a plastic tablecloth, and then put the papers on top of that to protect the table. Okay, so it depends on how you want to do it. I want you to pick how you're going to do the paper and then write that on there. So for my example, it was large piece, a butcher, paper, taped over table. That was my choice. I want you to make a choice of how you are going to do it. Diana, can you see the Word document? Where I typed just now, can you see that on the screen? Okay, great. Let me make it a little bigger. Okay, so that was my first choice for how I wanted them, what to paint on. Now your next choice is, what do you want them to paint with? This is your choice. If I was focusing on the sizes of brushes, I might only choose a couple colors or even just one color. Okay. And I'd probably choose a thicker paint rather than watercolor. But that's your choice. I want you to pick what kind of paint you want to use. For me, I'm going to put red and white tempera paint. I want you to pick what kind of paint you want to use and what colors and write them down. Then I want you to write down what you're going to do for paintbrushes. So for me, I'm going to write variety of paintbrushes. Smaller. Move this over. All right. A variety of paintbrushes, such as foam, palette knife, what else? Maybe consider how many kids are going to do it at a time. So if you're going to have 5 kids at the table at a time, you need at least 10 brushes, right? So you don't want to have 500 brushes there because that's going to be chaos. You need to be selective. And you don't want to use all the little brushes that came in your watercolor kits because they're all the same size, even though they have different color handles. Okay, so that's it for materials. What's next on your lesson?
On our next one, it says, how will you introduce the activity?
Okay, great. So, how will you introduce the activity? Anybody have a suggestion? So you're sharing with the kids the objective, and you don't need to have that really long objective. You're just sharing with them what's going on for this lesson. You can write it in the chat or you can call it out. What do you think?
Showing samples how we would do with the red and the white.
That's how you could teach it to them. But you do need to share why you're doing it or what's going on. So for my example here, I'm saying today we're going to try painting with different sizes of brushes or different kinds of brushes. Maybe different kinds and sizes.
We're going to try.
I see Lauren put on there the expectations. That's lovely. So you could start with like expectations for this activity are to not or to push gently. So we need to make it not a positive rule, right? Or to push gently on the brushes. And keep the paint on the paper. Those are my expectations. If you have different ones, you can put those. Push gently on the brushes, because you all have seen what happens when they use those brushes and push down with all their might. It kills the brush and it makes a hole in the paper. So the expectation is to push gently on the brush and keep the paint on the paper. And you can revisit those as they're getting excited and painting. Oh, I see you're pushing hard on the brush. Remember, we're using gentle touch with the brush. Oh, I see that you're starting to splatter your friend with paint. Remember, we're going to keep the paint on the paper. Oh, I just came up with another material when I said splatter. Smocks. Smocks might be a good idea if you're painting. Keep the children somewhat clean. All right, so we're telling them the objective. We're telling them pretty much what the rules are, what their expectations are for the activity. And Liz suggested modeling it. So you could show them, or you could put model how to dip brush in paint and make a mark. Allow children to move around table freely. That's because I have the big butcher paper. If you gave them just the individual piece, they can't be running all over the place. They need to stay with their piece of paper. And then allow children to paint using different brushes. And I'm guessing we would do this for a small group maybe, or it could be during free choice time. Either way, where you'd have a small group of children at a time. So allow children to paint using different brushes until they finish. Then clean their brushes in the sink. Okay, so that gets us with the how-to, correct? Is there anything else we need to add? Anything else we need to add in this section?
What does it say after they clean their brushes in the sink?
Sink? Mm-hmm.
Sink, okay, in the sink.
I like running water for cleaning paintbrushes. It's just a mess when you get little containers of water. But it's up to you if you want to get little containers of water, have at it. All right, is there anything else that we need for this section? Last call. All right, next section. What's the next section we need to do?
Step-by-step procedure.
Oh, I think we have that here. I think this is step number 1.
Okay. Oh, Jesus.
That's okay. That's why it's scratch paper.
That's step-by-step procedure, okay. Okay, let me do like this. Step by step. Okay.
Okay, and after step-by-step procedure, then what's the next section? Follow-up. All right, what might be a follow-up for this activity? Any suggestions? Not seeing any suggestions yet. Any suggestions on what we could put for a follow-up for this painting with different brushes? Okay, I'm seeing books on painting, so putting books on painting in the art area maybe. Using painting brushes in the sensory table, wonderful. I can't spell, y'all. There we go. I would say put some different brushes in the art area for them to use. Use brushes outside. I'm gonna put with water because that's a fun activity. Look up local artists or local painters, right? Okay, so those are some all good ideas for follow-up. You don't have to put all of these. You can change it up so it's useful for you. And we're going a little over the 11. I apologize, but I figured we should probably get this done. Let's get this part done, and then we'll go on break. And remember, this will be posted on YouTube for you. So don't get overly worried if you miss a sentence. You can go back and check it later on in a day or two when I post it. What is the next section that we need after follow-up? How to evaluate? Okay. How will we evaluate? How do we know that they fulfilled the objective to use different kinds of brushes? How will we know if it happened for them? Observation. I think that's pretty much the only thing you can do, right? So observe who participates and if they use the brush with gentle pressure. How many brushes did they use? Come on, little cursor. Hijo. It's not going to do it. So if you saw one child that was scared to come over and use the paint, that's something for you to follow up with. By putting those paint brushes in the sensory table, maybe they're more likely to try it over there where they won't get paint on their hands. Maybe by bringing the water outside with the paint brushes, they'll give it a try out there using something other than the red and white paint. So you're giving them multiple opportunities to get this objective. What's after evaluation?
Geez, Louise. Adaptation for children with special needs.
All right, adaptations. So we already discussed one of those just now. If a child is unwilling to use paint, allow them to use the brushes with water, or maybe I should put and/or, bring brushes outside to paint with water, or sensory table. So some children have a sensory issue with getting paint on their hands. They don't take it well. So the other ideas you had for putting dry paint brushes in the sensory table with maybe some sand, so they could still get that experience of mark making in the sand. Or if they're willing to take a little bit of water on their hands, they could try brushing with water. Anything else that is required on the activity? Are there any other sections of the activity that we've left off?
Just go back to adaptations for dual language learners if needed.
All right, dual language. Would we need anything for dual language learners on this? Think about the kids in your classroom. Is there additional information that you could use? Could you use perhaps their word, look up their word for paintbrush? So maybe you're learning, you make a note here, like in Spanish, paintbrush is pincel. I think that's correct. Anybody speak Spanish that can let me know? Is that accurate? Anybody? Okay, I'm also seeing brocha. Okay. Okay. So you could, if you have a child that speaks a different language, you could look up what the word is for brush. That might be useful. Aside from that, a lot of this is them observing you and copying what you're doing. So I think you're probably okay. Are there any other sections that we need to include?
Possible connections to other topics.
Ooh, I think we did some of that for follow-up. So let's see, possible connections. So I'm going to actually copy this stuff that we wrote here for follow-up. And I'm also going to put that and probably expand upon it a little bit down here for possible connections. What else? I'm going to put teach mini lesson on cleaning brushes. Read Oh goodness, what is that called? Mouse paint. I like that book because it is a good way to tie in a lesson on cleaning brushes, because the mice all dip their fur in paint and they do a painting activity, and at the end their paint starts getting sticky and stiff and they have to clean themselves off to be soft again. I think that's the last section on there, isn't it? Okay, thank you, Krista. All right, so here's the sitch. We didn't get around to the competency statement yet, but I told you I was going to let you out at 11. So I'm going to stick by my word and I'm going to let you out now. Don't leave yet. I'm going to let you out now. We're going to have an hour and a half. We'll come back and we'll start the competency statement together. Okay, let's get the concept for competency statement worked out amongst us. And then if you want to continue writing it on your own, you can, but let's start it together. All right, Vanessa, you're along for the ride then. Everybody else turn to 314, please. We're looking at the heading preschoolers. Underneath the title preschoolers are a bunch of bullet points that go on to page 315. Those are ideas they have for encouraging creativity in preschoolers. Please read through those and pick 2 or 3 that you already do in your classroom. We're going to take a few minutes and do this. Read those bullet points, pick 2 or 3 that you already do. Remember, we're not coloring in our textbook, so be subtle if you mark it in some way. Find 2 or 3 bullet points of things you already do in your classroom. It's page 314 and 315 under the title preschoolers. We're going to have a few more minutes. Okay, everybody should have picked 2 or 3 items on that bullet point list of things you do in your classroom. Does anybody want to give a shout out about one of the things? Can anybody share out loud one of the things from this list you do in your classroom?
Introduce new materials and equipment. Did you hear me?
I can hear you. I'm looking to find
Okay.
where it is.
Page
Where is it?
314, 314,
I
third
see it.
bullet.
I see it. 3rd bullet. Thank you.
Yes. Mhm.
Does anybody else have one of these bullet points you'd like to point out that you already do in your classroom?
Provide
A different one than
time
Liz?
to explore freely,
Give time to explore freely. Where is that?
or it's provide children time to fully explore. It's on
Okay, I see
page
it.
315.
I see it. All right, let's start our writing assignment with those two. You're doing it, when you do it yourself, you can pick any of these, okay? You don't have to pick the ones that Irene and Liz picked. You can pick the ones that apply to your classroom. But I'm going to start with our opening paragraph about how we, let's see, what did they say? How our teaching practices meet this standard. So I'm going to start with this. My teaching practices meet the standard of, I'm going to capitalize it, you can do what you want. So I'm just starting with that short little first sentence. My teaching practices meet the standard of creative. And then I'm going to share the 2 bullet points next. And Liz said specifically that she introduces new materials and equipment. So I'm going to start with that. I introduce new materials and equipment and let the children take the lead in deciding how to use them. Liz, do you have an example of some new materials we can use?
I'm thinking.
Okay.
The new materials will be Fanny, the new Fanny. I don't know, the frog.
You have a
New
frog?
materials. Yeah, the puppet frog.
Okay. Recently
Leapfrog. No, that's not how. I can't think right now.
I've added puppets to the home area. So I write the sentence that I wrote part of the bullet point, and then I followed it up with like, this is my proof that it happened. This is what actually I did in my classroom. I hope that makes sense. So the bullet point was I introduce new materials and equipment and let children take the lead in deciding how to use them. The follow-up was recently we have added puppets to the home area. All right, and now for the thank you, Krista, for that clarification on the chat. Now I'm going to use Irene's bullet point. I also provide children time to fully explore activities and materials. Irene, do you have an example of when you've done this recently?
The other day we had in the kitchen area the small plate coffee pot, and it kind of, you press a button and it sounds like it's percolating and stuff. Being that it was barely put in, everybody wanted to use it and how it works and stuff. So we kind of just let them do that before they even started using it in play.
Okay. So when I introduced a new toy coffee pot, the children were allowed to push all the buttons and try it out before free choice time. Okay, so that's my first paragraph. Remember, we usually have a first paragraph talking about, in general, how we meet the standard for the chapter. You can use whatever bullet points you like from pages 314 and 315, whichever bullet points appeal to you. Write the bullet point, and then I'm actually going to indent this just for funsies. I like a good indent. And then put an example of how you actually do it in your classroom right after it. I'm going to give it another minute or two for people to write or to take a screenshot or whatever you want to do before we work on the second paragraph. I'm going to flip through faces here and see if people are still look like they're writing or not. Give a shout out if you'd like some additional time before we go to the next paragraph. All right, let's move on then. The second paragraph is going to be about the lesson we just created, the activity we created before lunch. And if we look here, this is the question for it that I've highlighted. How does this experience reflect my philosophy on how to support young children's creative development? So again, you can still look on page 314 and 315 and see if any of those in particular apply to the lesson we created of trying out the different brushes on the big piece of paper with the two kinds of paint. Is there anything that jumps out at you on page 314 or 15 that would be appropriate to go with the lesson plan we created? I'm going to give you a couple minutes to read through and see if you can find one or two things that you think are appropriate on 314 and 315 that go with this, to go with the activity we created. For example, I'd start reading the first bullet point. Point out and comment on children's creativity. Let them know you think these actions are worth noting. I see you're using lots of bright colors in your painting. The orange paint makes the paper glow. So just go through one at a time and see if there's any that you think really apply to the lesson we created. 1, 2, 3, go. Does anybody need a little bit more time to read? Okay, so I've had Liz and Irene already answer me. Can anybody else tell me one of these bullet points that you think applies to the lesson we created before lunch? I'm gonna make the screen bigger so I can randomly call on somebody just for funsies. Oh, Anna, is your hand up? Wonderful. I couldn't see it until I opened the full screen. All right, Ms. Anna, can you tell us one of these bullet points that's appropriate?
The one that talks about valuing children's art and understand their scribble, splatters, and blobs are appropriate for their stage of development.
I think that's very appropriate.
Yeah.
All right, let me put that down. So did we ever name the brush experience? What should we name that? My activity blank. Something with brushes, something brushes. You know what? I'm not going to be very creative at the moment. I'm just going to write many brushes. Name it whatever you like. All right. My activity, many brushes. Reflects my philosophy of how to support young children's creative development in many ways. I am encouraging children to use the brushes to make different kinds of marks on the paper. And this is where I'm going to put the bullet point. I value children's art and understand it says scribbles, splatters, and blobs. Wow, I didn't write that very well. I value children's art and understand these marks are appropriate for their stage of development. I will ask children to describe their artwork and what they did to create it. I think that's very appropriate for our activity because they're going to be making different kinds of lines with the brushes. And you can ask them, oh, I see you made a really wide line. How did you make that? And they can show you. All right, let me make the screen big again so I can see who else might have a hand up. Or you know what? I should probably wait a minute for y'all to process that before I get the next one. I'm being quiet now. All right. Now I'm going to pull this up so I can see if anybody else raises their hand or wants to make a shout out. What is the second bullet point that you think we can use? Somebody that hasn't been called on for this yet. What is another bullet point we could use? Oh, Krista, thank you. All right, let me put this off to the side so I can see what Krista wrote. All right, have children revisit their work. When people are allowed time to return to an idea, they often see things in a new way and experience a breakthrough in their thinking. Let me see, where is that? All right. So we didn't put that as a part of the activity, but we could totally have that in one of the follow-ups maybe. Have children revisit and try it again multiple times so that they can figure out how to best use the materials.
Yes, sir. I was also thinking like just displaying their papers to like, so they could look at it kind of like you would an art gallery and see that everyone's different versions of kind of what they were doing in the activity and just kind of
That makes sense.
Maybe even together.
All right, so let's see. The artwork will also be displayed at the children's eye level for them to revisit their work. And then I can use the second half of that bullet point to kind of round it out. Thank you, Krista.
Are we still sharing out the point, the bullet?
What was that, Jennifer?
Oh, it's Sabrina. Sorry, it's in my. It's a different. It's Sabrina though. It's a different name on the. It's
Okay.
my like that. But it's Sabrina. I don't know why it says Jennifer. But the one that I thought went well is the one that says, provide children time to fully explore. Do not rush children from one activity to the next. Allow them to focus on the activities and materials in which they are most interested and curious.
Okay, I think I might put that a little further up in here. I kind of like the ending of hanging it up, so I'm gonna put that before then.
Okay.
Let's see. Where is it? Where was that? Was the not rushing thing? Where is it?
Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
So the first paragraph is 2 bullet points that we picked from the book. And the second paragraph are 2 different bullet points.
So the first paragraph is about, in general, how do you see creativity in your classroom? And we use 2 bullet points for that. The second paragraph is, how does my activity that I just created support creativity? Does that help? Okay. So here, let me put what I was just told in here. I'm going to move this down. I allow time for children to fully explore, The brush activity materials are available in the art area for children to practice with during free choice time. Okay. Now yours does not need to be exactly the same as mine. If anything is going to be the same, it should be that second paragraph. The first paragraph should be specific to you because you have different things and do different things in your classrooms. The second paragraph where we were talking about the brush activity we created together, that can all be the same. So after you're done writing this, and make sure you have something unique to you for the first paragraph. The first paragraph needs to be unique to you. The second paragraph can be the same. And you're going to email that to me when you're done. And how about I do that for attendance? Once you turn this in to me, I can mark you as present. Okay. That'll keep everybody honest. And my email is lillian.mcfarland@sanantonio.gov. If your name is not a part of the email you're sending it from, put your name in the body of the email. So I know who to give credit to.